Following a casual meeting in a lounge, two diplomats opened discussions. Finally, America's Jessop and Russia's Malik reached an agreement that surprised the world, an agreement on the question of Berlin. Outside the blockaded German capital, the western Autobahns were weedy with disuse. But at the frontier posts were signs of marked activity. On both sides, men repainted, erected signposts, checked maps, and generally prepared for business. Meanwhile, behind the closed barriers, lorries assembled into lines, their bonnets facing towards Berlin. And on the railways, there were signs of life. In the yards, trains were loaded, checked, and labeled. Russian, British, and American traffic controllers coordinated routes and schedules. 0 hour was to be 1 minute after midnight. But as dusk fell over Berlin, so the planes of the airlift roared on, down to the flare paths of the western sector. Agreement or no agreement, the air crews had their orders to keep flying. In the darkness, crowds gathered at the barriers. Excitement mounted to fever pitch. Eastern and western officials, alert for snags, eyed each other and waited. Waited for 1 minute after midnight. Zero hour had come and gone. And as vehicle after vehicle, train after train rolled through, the news went out to the world. After 327 days, the road to Berlin was open once more. On Paris's Avenue Foch lies the Palais Rose, and into its courtyard drove the shining cars of the foreign ministers. After months of strained separation, the Big Four were meeting at last. To a hopeful world, it seemed that all four were anxious for settlement, final settlement on all points of contention. And among these, first and foremost, were the thorny problems of Germany, her unity, her currency, and her control. While its fate rested in the diplomatic balance, Berlin drew new strength through its reopened arteries. Eastwards along the Autobahns poured lorries loaded with food and long-needed supplies. Along the tracks came long strings of trucks carrying Ruhr coal and vital machinery. In the city's shops and marketplaces, Berlin housewives queued for the first fresh vegetables they had seen for many a day. Thankful for even small benefits in a difficult existence, Berliners were in a mood for celebration. At a mass meeting before Mayor Reuter, the people of the western sector gave thanks for the termination of their long and weary ordeal. While in the eastern sector, the Russians, not to be outdone, staged a concert given by the Red Army. But, in spite of all hopes, peace was short-lived. Barely a week after the lifting of the blockade, strike gripped Berlin's railways. Opposing payment of wages in Eastern marks, 16,000 railwaymen ceased work. Then, as strikebreakers moved into action, tempers turned ugly. In the yards, stations, and sidings, the battle was joined. And as the strike grew out of hand, Russian retaliation spread to the Autobahns. So once again the barriers were closed. Once again, Berliners sat waiting for a settlement. A settlement. All such disputes were but parts of the major conflict. Resolve the whole, and the parts would look after themselves. But who could resolve the whole? Once again, the shadows deepened over Berlin. But in the dark skies, the planes flew on.